If you look around, you'll see the majority drifting, waiting, hoping life will somehow deliver what only discipline and direction can provide. But here's the truth. Following the crowd will almost guarantee failure. Let us talk today about the warning to the 95% and the opportunity for the 5% who dare to choose differently. You know, for centuries, thinkers have asked why so few succeed while so many fall short. Walk down any street and you'll see the same patterned men and women hurrying through life, following routines laid down by others, seldom questioning, rarely planning, simply drifting like leaves carried by the wind. And here is the warning: 95% of people, without even realizing it, settle for lives of quiet desperation. They hope instead of act. They conform instead of create. They wait for opportunity instead of preparing for it. And so, their days are spent chasing distractions, their dreams set aside for someday, which rarely ever comes. But there is another way, the way of the 5%. These are the individuals who stand out not because of luck, but because of choice. They decide what they want, they write it down, and they work toward it every single day. They understand that the crowd is almost always wrong. They know that success is not found in following the masses, but in following a clearly defined purpose. The central truth is this: we become what we think about. That statement has shaped empires, built fortunes, and created lives of meaning. Yet most people never pause long enough to ask, what am I thinking about? Where is it leading me? If your thoughts are scattered, so will be your results. If your thoughts are negative, your life will reflect it. But if your thoughts are fixed on a goal, nourished daily with discipline and faith, your life must, by the law of cause and effect, move in that direction. Practical steps begin here. First, decide exactly what you want. Not vaguely, not someday, but specifically in writing. Second, picture yourself as already in possession of it. Let that image guide your actions. Third, act every single day in a way that brings you closer to it. Fourth, guard your mind against the influences of the 95%, those who will mock, doubt, or discourage you. Finally, persist. When the crowd grows tired, you continue. When others quit, you remain. And here lies the warning: if you do what 95% of people do, if you think as they think, spend as they spend, drift as they drift, you will get what 95% of people get. But if you choose to think differently, to plan differently, to live differently, you place yourself among the rare few who discover the richness of life in every sense of the word. Most people follow the crowd without questioning where it's going. They move along with the current, not because they know where it leads, but simply because everyone else is headed in the same direction. You can see it in daily routines, in the way people choose careers, in the way they spend their money and their time. They imitate without reflection, and in doing so, they surrender the most valuable possession a person can have: the ability to think independently. There's a strange kind of safety people feel when surrounded by others, even when that crowd is heading toward mediocrity, even when that mass movement leads not to fulfillment but to quiet regret. The truth, often uncomfortable to face, is that the majority is almost always wrong about the things that matter most: happiness, wealth, and success. We live in a world where noise is mistaken for wisdom and popularity for truth. If enough people repeat the same line, it begins to sound believable, and if enough people march in the same direction, it seems like the right path. Yet stop for a moment and look closely at the results most people are getting. If following the crowd were the secret, wouldn't the majority be healthy, wealthy, and fulfilled? Wouldn't contentment and prosperity be the common story rather than the exception? But look around, observe with clear eyes, and you will find that the majority live paycheck to paycheck, their dreams shelved away, their ambitions dulled by routine, their spirits restless, waiting for some vague improvement that never arrives. The individual who breaks away from the herd doesn't do so by accident. He makes a conscious decision to think, to pause and ask, where is this crowd going, and is that truly where I want to end up? This act of questioning, this pause for reflection, is the beginning of wisdom. It is the beginning of freedom, for once a person realizes that most of what he sees around him is the blind following the blind, he gains the courage to chart his own course. He begins to understand that the safe road is often the most dangerous because it guarantees only the same results everyone else is getting. The crowd avoids risk, but in avoiding risk, they also avoid reward. They settle for the ordinary, telling themselves stories about security while never experiencing the deeper satisfaction that comes from building, creating, or striving for something truly one's own. Yet the great paradox is that the moment one steps away from the crowd, the fear that once seemed overwhelming begins to fade. The unknown, once terrifying, becomes a field of possibility, and in this space an individual discovers what the masses never do: that destiny is not dictated by chance but by choice. Most people will never question where they are going until it is too late. But the rare individual who dares to think differently, who dares to step aside and take responsibility for his own direction, discovers a truth that transforms his life forever. Success is not accidental, it's deliberate and built on daily habits. Nothing worthwhile in life has ever appeared by chance, nor has any man or woman risen to great heights because of luck alone. Success is the product of design, of clear intention, and of repeated actions carried out day after day until they form patterns so ingrained they become part of one's very nature. A person's future is not written in the stars, it is carved into existence by the small disciplines and choices repeated consistently long after the excitement has worn off. The reason so few achieve extraordinary success is because most people are unwilling to embrace the discipline of habit. They want the prize without the process, the harvest without the planting, the reward without the effort. Yet life has never worked this way. Each day is a seed, and the habits we practice are the tools with which we cultivate it. Just as a farmer cannot expect a field to yield crops without careful attention, so no person can expect life to yield success without first tending to his habits with patience and persistence. Every individual is, at this very moment, the sum of his habits. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are, and who you are determines what you achieve. If a person spends his mornings in idleness, if he fills his mind with distractions, if he speaks more than he listens and complains more than he acts, he should not be surprised when life reflects those choices back to him. But if another begins his day with intention, guards his thoughts carefully, practices gratitude, invests his hours in learning and applying, and treats every task as though it were important, then the result of those habits, given time, cannot fail to manifest in success. The great secret is not that habits are hard to build, but that people underestimate their power. They are invisible architects shaping the structure of our lives. A man does not ruin his future in a single day, nor does he achieve greatness overnight. He drifts downward or climbs upward by the steady pull of habits. The tragedy is that most people let their habits form by accident, without direction or purpose, while the successful deliberately choose habits that serve their goals. There is a law at work, impartial and unfailing: we reap what we sow. And what we sow is determined by what we do, not occasionally but consistently. Success, therefore, is not a single act of brilliance or a stroke of fortune. It is the result of countless small, often unseen choices made in private, carried out with persistence, and repeated until they create a new reality. The man who understands this ceases to envy the successful and begins instead to study their habits, for therein lies the true secret of achievement. And the moment he commits himself to building his own deliberate habits, he steps onto the path where success ceases to be accidental and becomes inevitable. The 95% let fear and doubt dictate their lives. They wake each morning with possibilities before them, yet before they even take the first step, their minds whisper reasons why they cannot, why they should not, why it would be better to wait. They hesitate, and in that hesitation, opportunities vanish like mist in the sun. Fear becomes the silent jailer, and doubt the chains that keep them from moving forward. Most people never recognize how much of their lives are steered not by their own desires, but by the quiet tyranny of these unseen forces. Fear does not announce itself with trumpets, it creeps in subtly. It tells a man that he is not ready, that others are more capable, that failure would be too painful to risk. It convinces him that security is more important than growth, that comfort is preferable to challenge, that conformity is safer than individuality. Doubt joins hands with fear and whispers that success is for someone else, that dreams are too far, that the effort will not be worth it. Together they build walls around a person until he begins to believe those walls are the boundaries of reality. And so the great tragedy unfolds. Lives are lived small, not because people lack potential, but because they allow fear and doubt to make their decisions for them. The 95% let their days slip by, waiting for conditions to be perfect, waiting for certainty before they act, waiting for guarantees in a world that offers none. In their waiting, years pass. Opportunities are lost. Dreams are buried quietly in the soil of hesitation. The few who escape this fate are not those born without fear or doubt, but those who refuse to let these voices dictate the course of their lives. They feel fear, and they act anyway. They experience doubt, but they choose faith. They understand that fear is simply imagination turned against them, and doubt is simply ignorance of what they are truly capable of. These individuals step forward not because they are certain of success, but because they know that growth itself is the reward. The truth is that fear and doubt will always exist, but they are poor masters and excellent servants. They can warn us of danger, but they were never meant to hold the reins of our lives. The person who allows them to lead will forever walk the broad road of mediocrity, surrounded by the 95% who trade possibility for safety. But the one who takes back control, who sees fear and doubt for what they are, illusions of the mind, finds that life opens like a door once thought locked. The difference between the 95% and the 5% is not talent, nor luck, nor circumstance. It is the decision of who sits in the driver's seat, fear and doubt, or courage and conviction. And that single choice marks the line between a life of quiet limitation and a life of remarkable fulfillment. The 5% accept responsibility for their results. They do not blame the economy, their upbringing, their boss, or the government for where they are in life. They recognize that these things may influence circumstances, but they do not control the outcome. The men and women who belong to this small group understand a profound truth. They are responsible for what they think, what they do, and ultimately what they become. This acceptance of responsibility is the cornerstone of freedom, for as long as you hand responsibility to others, you surrender the power to change. Most people spend their lives pointing fingers. They look outward for the causes of their misfortunes, finding comfort in excuses. The weather, their parents, their education, or the lack of opportunity. There is always a reason ready at hand to explain away mediocrity. And while these reasons may carry fragments of truth, they do nothing to alter reality. Excuses may soothe the ego, but they also chain a person to stagnation. The 95% do not see this trap because they would rather protect their pride than confront the responsibility that demands change. The 5% operate differently. They know that every decision, no matter how small, builds toward a destiny. If they are unfit, it is because they have neglected their health. If they are broke, it is because they have failed to master money. If they are uninspired, it is because they have neglected the discipline of feeding their minds. These are difficult admissions, but they are liberating, for once a person accepts that he is the architect of his own circumstances, he holds the blueprint in his own hands. No longer does he wait for the world to change. He sets about changing himself. This principle of responsibility is not about guilt, it is about power. A man cannot direct the wind, but he can adjust his sails. He cannot control the tide, but he can steer his ship. Life will always present challenges beyond anyone's control, but the 5% know that their reaction, their attitude, and their persistence are theirs alone to command. That is why even in adversity they move forward while the 95% sink deeper into complaint. What separates the few from the many is not brilliance or privilege, but a quiet decision made in the mind. I will take responsibility. From that moment on, excuses fall away. Complaining becomes unnecessary. They no longer waste energy resenting circumstances, for they are too busy reshaping them. With every day, with every choice, they take ownership of their future. The 5% are not superhuman. They are ordinary men and women who simply refuse to hand over the pen that writes their story. They may stumble, but they never deny that the stumbling was theirs, and because of that they rise again stronger than before. In a world where most look outward for answers, the 5% look inward and claim the only power that matters. The responsibility for their own results, wealth, and growth begin in the mind, not in circumstances. A man may be born into poverty, surrounded by limitation, yet if he possesses the right ideas and nourishes them with faith and persistence, he carries within himself the seed of abundance. Another may inherit riches and squander them quickly, because his mind is untrained and his thoughts remain fixed on scarcity. The difference is not the environment, but the inner landscape. Circumstances shift and change, but the mind is the true soil from which all results spring. Every building, every invention, every fortune ever created began first as a thought. A man imagined something better, something greater than what existed, and through his thinking, he found the way to bring it forth. The great irony is that most people wait for conditions to improve before they change their thinking, not realizing that their thinking is what creates the conditions. They look at the balance in their bank accounts, the state of the economy, or the opinions of others, and they allow these external things to dictate what they believe is possible. But the few who rise above the masses do so because they reverse the process. They see first in their minds what they desire. They hold that picture with conviction, and then they work with steady effort until the world around them reflects the vision they carried within. The principle is unshakable. What we consistently hold in our thoughts eventually becomes our reality. If we think in terms of lack, we reinforce limitation. If we dwell on obstacles, we multiply them in our path. But if we think in terms of growth, of service, of possibility, we attract ideas, opportunities, and people aligned with that direction. Wealth is not a number in a ledger. It is the expression of a mind trained to see abundance where others see only scarcity. Growth is not a matter of luck or chance. It is the natural result of a mind fixed on progress. The tragedy is that the majority never learn this truth. They believe their circumstances are permanent, that where they are is where they must remain. They wait for something outside themselves to change, not realizing that the lever to move their world is already within them. The mind is the workshop of creation, and it is here, and only here, that real wealth is first constructed. When a man begins to guard his thoughts, to direct them toward his goal, to fill his mind daily with ideas of improvement and possibility, he begins to transform not only his thinking but his life. His words change, his actions change, his results change. And in time the world looks upon him as fortunate, not knowing that fortune was born quietly in the secret place of his own mind. Wealth and growth are not handed down by chance. They are cultivated by those who understand that everything begins with thought. Time is the most valuable asset, yet it's squandered by the majority. Unlike money, it cannot be earned back once it is spent. Unlike possessions, it cannot be replaced when it is lost. Every man and woman receives the same 24 hours each day, yet the difference in what they make of those hours accounts for the great divide between success and mediocrity, fulfillment and frustration. The majority treat time as though it were inexhaustible, wasting it on trivialities, postponing their goals, and telling themselves there will always be tomorrow. But tomorrow is never guaranteed, and each wasted day is an opportunity gone forever. It is a strange thing to watch how people spend their hours. They guard their money with care, yet they give away their time as though it were worthless. They fill their days with idle talk, distractions, and activities that contribute nothing to their growth, and then wonder why progress never comes. The truth is, a person's future is being shaped minute by how he chooses to use his present. To squander time is to squander life itself, for time is life measured in moments, and when the moments are gone, so too is the chance to create something meaningful. Those who rise above the masses understand the sacred value of time. They treat each day as if it were an investment, placing their hours where they will yield the greatest return. They use time to learn, to create, to build, to move closer to their goals. They do not wait for perfect conditions because they know that time waits for no one. Every day lost to hesitation or idleness is a day that cannot be reclaimed, and success is built not on grand gestures but on the consistent, purposeful use of time. Consider the man who reads for an hour each day while another spends the same hour in idle entertainment. After a year, the difference between them is remarkable. After 5 years, the gap is enormous. The same span of time passed for both, but one used it to build his mind and his future, while the other let it slip away unnoticed. Multiply this difference over a lifetime, and it becomes the difference between a life of purpose and achievement and one of regret and missed opportunity. The clock is impartial. It does not care how you spend its gift. It ticks forward steady and relentless whether you act or delay, whether you create or procrastinate. The wise understand this and seize each hour with intention. They ask themselves not what is easiest, but what is most important. They focus on what contributes to their goals and their growth, and they leave behind the trivial and the meaningless. This is why a small minority accomplishes so much while the majority accomplish so little. The difference is not talent, luck, or even opportunity. It is how each group chooses to use the most valuable asset they already possess, the fleeting and irreplaceable gift of time. Success requires persistence long after the crowd has quit. It is the single quality that separates the achiever from the dreamer, the finisher from the starter, the victor from the one who almost made it. Most people begin with enthusiasm. They set out with energy, convinced that their excitement will carry them through. But when the road becomes long, when obstacles appear, when the novelty wears off, the majority falter. They tell themselves the timing isn't right, that the task is too hard, that maybe it wasn't meant to be. And so they stop joining the countless others who surrendered their dreams at the first sign of difficulty. Persistence is rare because it demands more than excitement. It demands endurance. It is the ability to keep going when the feelings of motivation have vanished, when progress is slow, when doubt grows loud, and when others have already abandoned the effort. The crowd may applaud at the beginning, but they grow quiet when the journey stretches on. Those who persist must learn to walk alone, often with nothing but faith and determination as their companions. Yet this is precisely what shapes them, for it is in the lonely hours, when no one is watching, that character is formed and success is forged. Every worthwhile achievement in history has been built on persistence. Great discoveries, lasting businesses, and works of art were not the product of a single burst of inspiration, but of consistent effort sustained long after the initial spark. The man who persists learns to treat failure not as defeat but as feedback, not as an end but as a stepping stone. He understands that each setback brings him closer to his goal. Provided he continues moving forward, he sees obstacles not as roadblocks but as tests separating those who merely wish from those who truly will. The tragedy of the majority is that they quit too soon. They underestimate how much time, effort, and resilience true success requires. They measure their progress against the crowd, and when they see others giving up, they take it as permission to stop as well. But the 5%, the ones who rise above, know that the quitting of the crowd is their opportunity. Every time another person drops out of the race, the field grows smaller, and the rewards grow larger for the ones who remain. Persistence is not glamorous, nor is it easy. It is often monotonous, sometimes exhausting, and nearly always underestimated. But it is also unbeatable. The man who refuses to quit cannot be defeated, because no failure is final until he accepts it as such. With each step, he grows stronger, more resilient, more certain of the inevitability of his success. And in the end, when the race is over and the rewards are given, it will not be the fastest who win nor the most talented, but those who simply refuse to stop when the crowd had already walked away. Small disciplines practiced daily create extraordinary results. It is not the occasional burst of effort that changes a life, but the steady, quiet habits repeated without fail day after day. Most people look for dramatic change, for sweeping victories that happen overnight, yet life does not work that way. Progress is built in small increments, often invisible at first, stacking one upon another until the weight of persistence produces results so significant they appear, to the outside world, as sudden success. But there is nothing sudden about it. It is the culmination of countless small disciplines performed faithfully long before anyone noticed. Consider the simple act of reading for 30 minutes each day. At first, it may not seem to matter much. But over a year, that adds up to hundreds of hours, dozens of books, and insights that compound into wisdom. The person who practices this discipline quietly gains an edge, one that separates him from the majority who waste those same minutes on distractions. Or think of the individual who saves a small amount of money consistently while others spend impulsively. At first, the difference is hardly visible. But over years, that discipline compounds into security, freedom, and wealth, while the spender is left with little to show for all his effort. The difference is not talent or luck. It is the choice to practice small disciplines that accumulate into great rewards. The tragedy is that most dismiss these daily actions as too minor to matter. They tell themselves that skipping a day won't hurt, that neglecting the small things makes no difference. And they are right in the short term. Missing a single workout does not destroy one's health, just as saving $1 will not make a person rich. But habits compound for better or for worse. Repeated neglect grows into weakness, while repeated discipline grows into strength. Time magnifies everything, rewarding those who persist and exposing those who delay. The truth is that success is not built in the grand arenas where crowds are watching. It is built in the quiet moments when no one is paying attention. The daily decision to rise early, to focus, to practice, to study, to plan, to act, these are the disciplines that accumulate into mastery. By the time the results are visible to the world, the work has already been done, the foundation already laid, brick by brick, habit by habit. Small disciplines are within reach of anyone, yet only a few recognize their power. They require no extraordinary talent, only consistency. They demand no stroke of luck, only persistence. And because of this, they are the great equalizer, available to all yet mastered by few. Those who ignore them find their lives drifting toward mediocrity, while those who embrace them discover, in time, that extraordinary results were simply the inevitable outcome of ordinary actions repeated faithfully, day after day. To join the 5%, one must think independently, act decisively, and never stop growing. The road to uncommon success is not traveled by those who simply follow the opinions of others, nor by those who wait endlessly for conditions to be perfect before they act. It is reserved for the individual who dares to think for himself, who forms his own conclusions, and who has the courage to step forward when the crowd hesitates. Independent thought is the starting point, for without it a person is doomed to live by borrowed ideas, never discovering the power of his own mind. The 95% take comfort in conformity, yet conformity is the path to mediocrity, and mediocrity is the silent thief of potential. The 5% are different. They ask questions others never ask. They refuse to accept the limits handed down by the crowd, and instead they test, they explore, they discover. They know that the majority is usually wrong about the most important matters in life, so they trust their own reasoning more than the shifting opinions of society. This independence of mind gives them the courage to make decisions with clarity and confidence. They understand that success is not the result of endless hesitation, but of decisive action taken in the direction of a clearly defined goal. Action is where the dream takes shape. Too many spend their days thinking, planning, and wishing, yet they never move. They wait for certainty, forgetting that certainty comes only after action. The 5% do not wait, they act, they decide. They take steps, even if small, because they know that forward motion builds momentum, and momentum builds success. A person who acts decisively may stumble, but he stumbles forward learning, adjusting, and growing stronger with every attempt. The one who hesitates never leaves the starting line, and so he mistakes safety for progress, not realizing that inaction is the most dangerous choice of all. But independent thought and decisive action are not enough unless they are accompanied by continual growth. Life does not stand still, and neither can a person who seeks to rise above the majority. The 5% are relentless students. They feed their minds with books, ideas, and experiences. They learn from failures and victories alike. They invest in themselves with the understanding that personal growth is the foundation upon which all external success is built. While the 95% spend their time entertaining themselves, the 5% spend their time improving themselves, and in time the difference is unmistakable. To think independently is to see clearly. To act decisively is to move boldly. To never stop growing is to guarantee progress, no matter the obstacles. These three qualities form the pattern of the 5%. They are not extraordinary in talent, nor are they favored by luck. They are simply men and women who choose to think for themselves, to act when others hesitate, and to grow when others remain still. And because of these choices, they claim the rewards that the 95% leave untouched. To purpose is the compass that separates leaders from followers. Without it, people drift aimlessly, moved only by the opinions of others, the demands of the moment, or the distractions of the day. They wake each morning with no clear direction, reacting instead of creating, following paths laid out by those who do have a sense of purpose. And so the great mass of humanity moves like a crowd wandering through fog, each waiting for someone else to lead, never realizing that the missing element in their own lives is a guiding purpose. The difference is clear when you observe the few who possess it. A man with purpose does not drift. He knows where he is going and why he is going there. Obstacles that would stop others become mere challenges to overcome, because he measures everything against the vision he holds in his heart. While others wonder what the day will bring, he decides what he will bring to the day. This sense of direction radiates from him, and people are naturally drawn to follow, not because he demands it, but because clarity inspires trust. Purpose provides meaning to effort. Without it, work feels like drudgery, a series of tasks performed without connection to anything larger. With it, even the smallest action becomes significant because it contributes to something greater. This is why leaders endure when others quit. They see their labor not as isolated tasks, but as steps toward a goal that matters deeply. Followers lose heart because they do not know why they labor. Leaders press on because they know exactly why. The tragedy is that most never stop to discover their purpose. They wait for it to appear by chance, or they assume it will be handed to them by circumstance. But purpose is not found in waiting, it is found in choosing. It is born from reflection, from asking what one values most, from deciding what one wishes to create or contribute. It does not have to be grand in the eyes of the world, but it must be clear and compelling to the individual. Once chosen, it acts like a compass, always pointing true, guiding decisions, shaping habits, and aligning energy. When purpose directs a life, distractions lose their hold. The man with purpose does not waste time chasing every opportunity or indulging every impulse. He knows what fits and what does not, and he has the courage to say no to what does not serve his direction. In a world where the majority scatter their energies in 1,000 directions, he conserves his strength by moving steadily along one. Purpose transforms ordinary people into leaders, not because they seek followers, but because they illuminate a way forward. Others, seeing that light, are inspired to walk with them. The crowd will always be large, but within that crowd, only a few will ever step out with conviction. Guided by a clear and unwavering compass called purpose, the warning to the 95% is clear. The path of the majority leads to mediocrity, regret, and wasted potential, not because people lack talent or opportunity, but because they surrender to fear, drift without purpose, squander their time, and live by habits formed by chance rather than design. The 5% prove that a different way exists. They think independently, act decisively, take responsibility, and persist long after others have quit. They guard their minds, value their time, and build their lives upon small disciplines that compound into extraordinary results. They are guided by purpose, and because of this, They rise to leadership while the crowd remains content to follow. The choice is always before us to drift with the 95% or to step onto the narrow road of the 5% where success, fulfillment, and true freedom are found.